Okay. All right, guys, let's talk about what I think might just be one of the best all-around e-ink digital notebooks, and that would be the Supernote Manta. Now, the Supernote Manta recently just came out, and I had a chance to check it out before honestly it ever launched because the brand was willing to give it to me before it launched to check it out. So I've been using this thing, I think, for a couple of months at this point. So I have some pretty good idea of what's great about it, what's not great about it, and so that's what we're gonna be talking about in today's video. But first, let's go ahead and talk about what it is. And before we do that, let's mention that I do have links down in the description and the top comment of this video. If throughout the video you think this might be right for you, there are paid links down there, so I do get a commission if you guys decide to go for it. But otherwise, let's get into what the Manta is. Now, while at first glance the Manta may look like a larger Nomad, which is the smaller version of the Manta, there are quite a few differences, so I'm going to try to kind of mention those differences throughout this first part of the video, so you guys can decide for yourself if maybe the smaller form factor is better for you. Now, the Manta is a 10.7-inch diagonal display digital notebook, as opposed to the 7.8-inch of the Nomad. And the idea behind it is essentially that you're supposed to bring anything that could possibly use paper and bring it into one device. So I'm talking about things like books. Yes, it has Kindle on it. This is for your to-do list. This is your drawings and calendars, and for some reason, randomly email capabilities. Now, because of that, it doesn't have a browser. You don't have any form of social media, and you don't really have any of those time-wasting apps. The idea is you want to be able to get away from your phone, but still be able to do the things that you need to do. And it actually has done a really good job of that, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. As for the nerdy specifications, you're looking at 0.83 pounds, and at its thickest point, which is kind of in the middle of the device, you're looking at 0.24 inches wide. Now, the Manta utilizes a half folio instead of a full folio that the Nomad has, and that allows it to be much, much thinner while still being a larger device. And I got two different styluses. I got the Lamy Safari Vista EMR pen, but they also sent the Lamy Safari Twin EMR pen as well, but I found myself using the Vista much more. Now, as for the display, you're looking at a 1920 by 2560 resolution. It has multi-touch capabilities and is even able to reject when you have your palm on the display. It does have a film over top of the display, and this gives you kind of a more pen-like feel to it rather than pencil, so if you like writing with pens, this is probably more for you. And as for processing power, it has a 1.8 gigahertz quad-core processor, along with 4 gigabytes of RAM and 32 gigabytes of storage. All of this is powered by a 3600 milliamp removable battery. And now with all that boring stuff out of the way, let's talk about what I do and what I do not like about this tablet. And we'll go a little bit more into each of the features I kind of talked about earlier during this section of the video. All right, so the number one thing I really liked about the Manta has to be its writing experience. I think they have done a fantastic job with this. And I think, especially in its larger screen, one of the big issues I had with the Nomad that I had tested a while back that they had given me is it was really, really nice and compact for fitting in backpacks. But if you're looking for like drawing or note taking or any of that kind of stuff, it's a little bit too small of a screen. And especially since I use mine a lot for work, I kept finding myself wanting a bigger screen, which is why I was really excited when the Manta came out. But of course, that larger screen does come with drawbacks, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. The number two thing that I really liked about it is its pen-like writing experience. I talked about this a second ago. However, if you're somebody that tends to draw with pens a lot, this might be something you're a little bit more used to. And when you first start using these tablets, whether it's the Nomad or this Manta that I'm talking about in this video, it feels a little bit gummy, but after about a day of using it, you get really, really used to it, and it feels much more like using a ballpoint pen rather than using a pencil. There are some other tablets out there that do feel a little bit more like pencils, but this one is a little bit more like a pen, and I have to say its experience is really nice. It's among some of the best I've ever used. And now, while it's not technically the tablet, I really, really liked the new Lamy pens. They partnered up with Lamy to create their new generation of styluses. It is still a ceramic nib stylus, but it feels more like a normal pen and not quite so heavy like their Heart of Metal Pen 2 that I had used the last time. And I have been really impressed with it. It's super lightweight, it feels like a normal pen, and it really doesn't take away from the experience at all, and if anything, adds to it. The next thing that I really liked about it is how lightweight it is. Now, this is a big tablet. It's 10.7 inches diagonal. That's a big tablet. However, they've cut down a ton of weight, and getting into why it's called the Manta, the idea behind it essentially is that the tablet is going to be really, really thin, but like a manta ray, in the middle of the manta ray, it's actually a little bit thicker, and then it tapers out and is thinner on the edges, which means they're not only cutting down on mass, but just overall the tablet ends up feeling thinner in general, even if it technically is a little bit thicker in the middle. Now, the manta ray thing actually comes down to the fact that the tapering ends with the power button as well as the charging port, which kind of doesn't taper out, which kind of makes it look a little bit more like a manta ray, and that's kind of cool. But in comparison to a lot of the other note-taking tablets, I have to say this tablet is extremely lightweight and is really, really thin. If you're looking for a really awesome go anywhere larger drawing tablet like this, this is a really good one. The next thing is the half folio. I really liked the full folio of the Nomad, but it definitely added quite a bit of bulk to it, and I didn't really like the placement of the pen on it. The half folio has completely fixed that. The half folio is easily removable, but it is pseudo permanently placed on there, so it's not just gonna fall off and you don't pull it off like magnets like you did with the Nomad. And it allows for it to be considerably thinner than it was on the Nomad, so it is a really good trade-off. I have to say it doesn't feel quite as nice as the full folio from the Nomad, but I think the trade-offs are definitely worth it. Oh, and it should also be mentioned, the pen is now pseudo-permanently fixed to the tablet, not to the folio, which I really liked because you're not flapping around the pen every time you open up the folio. The next thing I like is actually coming down the operating system. This actually was a big drawback for me when I was using the Nomad, and I have to say I am getting used to it. You can definitely tell this tablet was created, how do I say it? Not necessarily for the general public, it's more for like developers and a little bit more techie type people, because it feels a little bit more kind of archaic, a little bit more older style of technology with their file system, and there isn't any form of home screen, and you're kind of going into a couple different menus to get to different things. But I have to say I've gotten really used to it, and I really like things like their quick access area where you can access your most used stuff. And it's little things like their lasso tool can allow you to link to different places in your documents, which means you can kind of create a really nice table of contents that you can jump around throughout your notes, and it's pretty cool. It's something I feel like the general public really wouldn't necessarily think of, but works really, really well in this tablet. And of course, there's a lot of other things I really like about this tablet. It really, really is probably the best larger note-taking tablet out there for most people in value and all that stuff, but let's go into the things that I didn't like about it to see if they're deal breakers for you. The number one thing is the screen reflection. Now, when you're using a normal book or a normal piece of paper, there really isn't any form of reflection, but with pretty much all of these tablets, there is. It's a normal screen just with kind of a rubbery kind of surface on top of it, and so you are still gonna get reflections from light, especially I noticed when I was reading Kindle books. I had to constantly be kind of moving it around to be able to read the display, and you didn't get that on normal Kindles, and it was a big drawback for me, especially when you're trying to replace all of your different paper into one device. It's a bit of a drawback, but is something I easily got around. The number two thing I didn't like is that the screen is actually darker than a normal piece of paper. Now, this has no front light, this has no backlights. You are fully using normal lighting in your home or in your business to be able to see the tablet, and with the paper-like screen being a little bit darker than normal paper, I found sometimes it was a little bit harder to read because, you know, it's darker than normal paper, so it's always going to be a little bit harder to see. But there is still a lot of contrast there, and it's not a huge deal, but just a little bit noticeable, especially if you put a piece of paper up to it. The next thing I didn't like is it comes down to its larger size. The big trade-off of having that larger screen than the Nomad had is it's a little bit more difficult to fit into tech pockets. I found this especially in things like my Able Carry backpack, where I have a laptop in there and I have that tablet style tech sleeve. I had a harder time fitting the tablet into that tablet sleeve because it was just so much larger than the Nomad, whereas the Nomad fit perfectly in there. there. I didn't have to worry about it moving around. The Manta just is a little bit too large for those and sometimes had to live in with the laptop, so then they're kind of rubbing up against each other. And so it just makes it a little bit less mobile than the smaller version. And the next thing is how expensive it is. Now, if you get the things that you need to have for this tablet, the half folio is an added option, and your stylus is going to be an added option, and you really do need those things to have this tablet. You're looking at over $600 for this tablet, and that puts it into comparison with things like an iPad Air, which I would say is considerably more capable, but it's not a minimalist device, so it does pull you kind of, into social media. You have browsers, you have all those kind of things, and of course you have that blue light, which isn't as nice to look at. But when you're looking apples to apples and you're like, hey, the iPad is much more capable and it's a similar price, you really have to be somebody that wants a truly minimalist device that really does a lot of writing to go with the Manta. So that makes it a little bit more of a niche device than I'd say the Nomad was. But for those that want to pull away from their phones and their computer screens and all that like I am, yeah, I'd say it's worth it. But I'd definitely say don't go any more expensive than that. And the number 5 thing I didn't like about the tablet, again, comes down to its size. I really, really like that Supernote allows for the Kindle app on this. Things like, there's a ton of other tablets like this, these note-taking tablets that don't allow for Kindle, and Supernote has done a fantastic job of including it. I think that is a huge, huge benefit of this tablet. But its larger size doesn't make it great for reading books. The Nomad was considerably better than that, because for times like when you're on the couch or like you're laying down, the larger 10.7-inch screen definitely makes it a little more cumbersome and makes it so you're kind of like, laying like this. It's not amazing. I'd probably go again for the Nomad if you're wanting to read books. I did also notice that the Manta is a little bit more prone to damage. I literally had this like 1 or 2 days and I already had a nick in it and kind of separated the body from it. I literally don't even know what happened and how that happened. Thankfully the body was just snapped back on, but I do have a little bit of final lasting damage on the Manta, and it's a bit of a bummer. I would say the Nomad is probably going to be a little bit more damage resistant, and I think the plastic's a little bit harder on the Nomad, but that's the only damage I've had to it, and now it's been a couple months and I haven't seen it any further. And that brings us to who the Manta is for. It's for somebody like me, somebody who takes a lot of notes, doesn't want to be on their screen so much, and just wants to be able to read, wants all those things, but doesn't want to be on a blue light screen, doesn't want to be distracted by checking all these different things, all my statistics for my YouTube channel, my analytics for my website and all that stuff, and want to be able to just kind of pull away from things while still being able to work. I think it's a fantastic thing to do. I think the Manta is more for people that use it for work, and I'd say the Nomad is probably a little bit more for people that are going to use these for play. I think they both are fantastic tablets, but if you use this for work, I'd probably go with the Manta all day, every day, unless of course you're going to travel a lot with it, which you might think about maybe getting the Nomad instead. Who is it not for? If you're somebody that needs all of this extra information, needs to be able to surf on the web, needs to download all the different Android apps and all that kind of stuff, this is not for you. This is a true minimalist device. This is meant to get you away from all of those screens. So make sure to keep that in mind when you're looking to purchase this product. This is a fantastic tablet. It has been one of my favorites, and being so lightweight, it is so awesome. I do have some other tablets like this in testing, so make sure to subscribe and like if you want to see those reviews as they come out, and I'll see you guys next time.